Hey friends, welcome back to another Seed Talk with Lisa and Layne. Hey Layne.
Hello.
And we have one of our good friends here with us today, and we just want to welcome Ellen Frost of Local Color Flowers. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you.
It's always fun to talk to Ellen, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
I think the last time the three of us together was when we discovered amoebium, which is a
yes.
flower that has changed our lives down here.
Yes, I love it.
So Ellen is here with us today, and we're going to talk about a struggle she has. And Layne will tell us all about that. But before we jump in, if you're new here, welcome aboard. We're so glad you're here. If you want to learn more about the work that we're doing, you can find our home base is thegardenersworkshop.com, which is full of a fully stocked online garden shop, which includes all the seeds, tools, and supplies you hear Layne and I mention from time to time here on the podcast, as well as a fully stocked online library of online courses, of which Ellen is an instructor also with the Gardener's Workshop. And you can find her courses there as well as others. If you are starting a flower growing business, or you want to expand your business into other areas, or any flower-based business, we can hook you up. Layne, tell us what we're going to talk about today and why Ellen is here.
So I will have Ellen reintroduce herself, but she has been on Seed Talk several times before. We love having her on, and we always learn something. Today, we're going to be talking about, like Lisa said, a struggle that she has. She really loves a certain flower, zinnias, but there are some challenges she has that prevent her from being able to use it more frequently in her design. So we're going to go one by one through each of these issues, these challenges, and see if we can troubleshoot between a farmer represented by Lisa and a florist represented by Ellen, and see if we can reconcile this relationship that's struggling a little bit.
I love it.
So Ellen, could you just remind everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm the owner of Local Color Flowers. We are a floral design studio located in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm also a course instructor, as Lisa said, with the Gardener's Workshop. I also write a weekly newsletter, which is how this whole zinnia issue got started. I wrote a short article in the newsletter a few weeks ago, detailing my struggles with zinnias. And let me clarify, I did not say I hate zinnias or that I never use zinnias. I like zinnias and I do use them. However, I wrote about some struggles that I have and how it makes them hard for me to use. And I got a lot of feedback. And one person suggested that Lisa and I get together and talk about this issue. So here we are today.
Yes. And I think a phrase you used, Ellen, was, I've been burned by zinnias.
Yes, I have been burned by zinnias many times.
And I totally understand that, Ellen, because I will say that back in our supermarket mixed bouquet days, I feel your pain, when you're sending flowers out in arrangements or in bouquets. Yeah. So I totally get it. So we're going to find a happy medium.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes. We're going to do some flower therapy here today.
Yes.
For all of us.
Yes. For all of us. Okay. So I just want to say, for anyone watching over on YouTube, we really tried to round up some pictures of bad looking zinnias. And Ellen was the only one that could find one picture, and it was the lone picture. So for the rest of the presentation, we're just going to be looking at pictures of zinnias looking nice, just because we had a lack of photographs to choose from. All right. So let's start off with something positive, Ellen. What do you like about zinnias?
I mean, there's so much to like about zinnias, right? I mean, one, the colors are amazing. Both, the very brightly colored summer Baneri giants that you see like at every farmer's market that most growers have grown. And as a wedding designer, I also really love all of like the new sort of vintagey queen orange lime, queen lime red, like all of those vintagey zinnias that have come out in the last few years. And, I know Florist is doing a lot of breeding, bringing a lot of new zinnias to the market. So the colors themselves, awesome. Just like very versatile, great for design. Also, like great shape, great size, right? So they're big enough to be a focal flower in a lot of designs. Also small enough where they can sort of step back behind dahlias if they need to. So all of that is really fabulous. They also have like a really long harvest window for us. Zinnias probably start, near the 4th of July here, and they go right through frost. And we even have a couple varieties and a couple growers who grow in Baltimore City, which makes it a little warmer here. Like we have some heat island issues. And we might have some like Aztec zinnias or the Persian carpets all the way through to almost Thanksgiving. So we have a really long window of using zinnias if they are usable. So all of those things I love about zinnias.
Yeah. And there's different sizes to choose from. I know that's something that you like. And
yeah. So, like the Benary giants are really big. I mean, you can really, use that as a focal. And then down to like the Persian carpet or the Aztec, those are so small and so cute and so interesting that they can really be just more of an accent. So you can really use a great mix of, and of course, like the cupcake zinnias, super adorable. They're all very interesting. They have a very interesting aesthetic for sure.
And price wise, what do you like about them?
Great. Price is great.
Yeah.
They are an inexpensive option compared to, in my head, I'm always pairing zinnias and dahlias together because their season sort of is the same. Where dahlias are, could be double or triple the price of zinnias. So zinnias are a great way to sort of fill in a lot of space with a flower that is beautiful, but has sort of a lower price point, where you can use the dahlias maybe more as the focal and more of an, sort of an accent. You can really fill in with the zinnias. You can get like a lot more surface area just, in terms of filling designs with zinnias for a lower price.
Ellen, I do have another question, not directly related, but I know you like to be able to dry your leftovers and you have a preference for flowers that can be dried. Do you dry zinnias at all?
We have dried zinnias. I don't think they dry very well. We don't like put any real effort into drying them. They don't keep their color that great and they kind of look kind of shrivelly. So unlike some, sort of face flowers that would dry well, like straw flower or something, the zinnias don't really dry well. And I don't really feel that bad about that because, like I said, they are a lower price point. So I feel like as long as we can use most of them, we're getting our money's worth for sure.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Lisa, about things that you know that your florist that you would sell to liked about zinnias?
So, I just thinking back, I had one particular customer, and gosh, we get zinnias so much earlier than you, Ellen. I mean, we typically are cutting zinnias the end of May down here.
Wow.
I mean, well, we of course transplant. We start them inside in soil blocks, so that gives us a 3 or 4 week bump, right? And then we get warmer earlier. But the minute that we get zinnias, our commercial customers start dropping their Gerber daisy standing orders.
Yes.
It's like the stand-ins for those. And, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think the Gerbers were not a whole lot more than zinnias, but there was a saving. So, and people just absolutely loved them.
Yes.
I am totally on board about your burnt. I can't wait to go through what your issues were and just to share how we kind of handled it and what we did and what I've learned through the years of living with zinnias and their potential unpredictability.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our first zinnia challenge from Ellen, and it's a big one, and I'm calling it cooler confusion. Okay, Ellen, go ahead and describe this issue.
Well, we're jumping really into the deep end because this is one of my major issues with zinnias.
Yeah.
I have always been told coming up in the flower industry that zinnias, along with things like basil, should not be put in a cooler. And so for me, that feels confusing because when flowers come in from a farmer, we immediately put them in a cooler. Okay, so that's the first issue. The second issue is when I'm designing. So say I'm designing on Thursday for a wedding on Saturday or Sunday. I make 20 centerpieces and they have zinnias in them. I can't not put them in the cooler because the studio is not going to be air conditioned for 4 days at, a low enough temperature. But if you're saying I can't put them in the cooler, then I don't know what to do.
Right.
So let me also say that maybe this advice isn't right, because now I'm getting conflicting advice from growers on their availability lists who are putting notes. Like, I got a note from a grower a couple weeks ago on the availability list that said, put these in the cooler as soon as you get them, change the water every day, and only use them for up to 2 days. Okay, so now I'm saying, yes, put them in the cooler, don't put them in the cooler. So one is, I rely on farmers a lot to tell me how to care for the product that they're giving me. But I seem to be getting conflicting information from different farmers. So that's my first issue.
So what is the verdict, Lisa? Do you say in or out of the cooler?
Well, the cooler is a very wide opportunity. There are tropical coolers, and there are the coolers that most, in my experience, commercial customers keep their coolers are at cooler temperature to keep roses and tulips and lilies from moving along.
Yeah.
So first, but we're jumping ahead. So I will say to you that as even in our high production years, we literally turn our cooler off for the summer. So that tells you what I do. Our goal was, we always moved flowers typically within 36 hours of them being harvested to the customers. And I actually put a note on our invoices for basil, zinnias, coxcomb, celosia plumes, our top sellers, that they shouldn't go in the cooler. Because in my opinion, I think that they could go into a tropical cooler, because I did have one commercial customer that he is a tropical nut. So he bought tons of tropics, which that means it's a much warmer cooler. Well, do you know what that, I mean, is it like 46 or something like that?
I don't know the temperature, but that is a good point, because everybody's cooler is at a different temperature. We run our cooler at 44. So we're not down to 30,
right,
35, but there's no way for a grower on an availability list to know what everybody's coolers are like.
Exactly. So if I was going to put a statement like that, I would have to say what that cooler minimum temperature would be. But my general consensus, because, I think I'm like the plant mama. I think through a plant. It's like these plants that grow and thrive in the heat of summer just don't like it cool. They just don't. They aren't warm and fuzzy that way. And as we got bigger and bigger and my cooler got smaller and smaller, do you know what I mean? When you're getting more and more volume, it's like, all right, what do we put in the cooler? That's how I came to that conclusion. And then listening to Dr. John Dole, who is our researcher for the cut flower industry.
Yes.
This is one of the things he does studies on, right? And I mean, I think John would say a tropical, which I think you're on the edge of a tropic.
Yeah.
I think it's like, we would have to look it up, but I would say it's probably over 46 degrees, maybe. But again, I think that's not a zinnia's sweet spot.
Yeah.
They like it warm.
Right.
So my goal was always to harvest them at the proper stage, condition them the way that we've been taught to condition them, and get them to that customer as quick as possible. And I think the same underlying problem heats up all the problems that you have mentioned, because I have experienced them all too. And again, according to John, a lot of that actually starts out in the field in problems that develop out there that start showing their heads once we get them inside. So I don't want to talk ahead of what we're going to be talking about. But I feel like a tropical cooler could work for zinnias, but I just feel like that's just not an option for most people. They don't have that. They don't have but one cooler. They don't have two. My customer that I referred to actually had 3 or 4 big coolers. I mean, he was a high volume guy, right? So it worked out that way for him. But my statement is that we don't put them in a cooler. We harvest them at the proper stage and get them to where they're going as quickly as possible. And I do not have a remedy for what do you do when you're making 20 arrangements that have other cool flowers in them, flowers that really need to be in cool temperatures to keep them fresh. I'll tell you that one of our customers that was a big customer, I know that they had a little system where they added those types of tropics that they couldn't store in a cooler as stuff was leaving to go to the event that day, which just adds another step, So you have to
Right.
wait.
And we have done that. We have definitely, used that technique. As stuff comes out on Saturday,
Right.
we will, fill in with zinnias. However, not only adds another step, it adds more stress
Yeah.
to our day or our process, because we always have to be worried, is there going to be enough time to add these?
Right.
Or, honestly, just like the mindset of leaving flowers in the shop without the air conditioning on when it's,
Right.
heating up to 88 degrees, and you're leaving them out for 2 or 3 days, like my mind starts to get like,
Yeah.
this doesn't seem right either.
Yeah. And so, where our workshop is air conditioned and kept it probably about 68 to 70 degrees is our goal. And sometimes it gets a little warmer when it's really hot outside. And so I totally agree with you. And so perhaps zinnias don't fit the event deal. When we sold to Florist, my goal was always, I wanted to sell the flowers that my commercial customers used every day of their business life, not just certain colors on certain weekends, that kind of thing. So I wasn't up against this. And I know that there are growers that are, but perhaps zinnias are not the flower poster child for the reasons. I mean, those are all valid. Those are all valid concerns.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the cooler issue may be a deal breaker for you in terms of event work, at least.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to Ellen's challenge number 2, and this is about water, the water in the buckets. She's gotten conflicting information about whether or not she should be changing this water. Ellen, can you describe this issue for us?
Yeah, so this is new to me this year. I have never been told to change the water in a bucket that a farmer has given me. I've always received the flowers. The growers that I work with, we have vetted them, so we know that they are doing post-harvest care correctly.
Right.
So we are getting, a bucket of flowers. They go in the cooler, they sit for however long, and when we use them, we put them, in clean water in an arrangement or in a different bucket. But then I had a grower this year that told us to change the water every day in the buckets for the zinnias that are like being stored. I've never heard of that. And also, like, my thought was, well, one, I don't have time or energy to do that. Like, that's not, we just don't. And two, because I don't really know, I'm not as familiar with like the post-harvest, I know the chlorine tablet, but I know that there's stuff in that water that it doesn't seem like I should be changing it out every day. I don't know. So again, an added step and unsureness or, uneasiness with like, how do we handle this?
So I think that this, as well as, previously we were talking about the cooler, I think these are people perhaps trying to overcome issues. You know what I mean? Sure. They're just trying to solve the problems, right? So if they are delivering zinnias to you in buckets with water, do they leave their water? Do they bring it? Okay. So if perhaps that water had CVB in it, if they harvested with that and didn't change it out, then I could see why maybe changing the water once might be the next step, because CVBN should be in it for at least 4 hours, but 72 hours later, there's nothing left. It's dissipated, it's no longer stable in the water. So I'm just trying to talk my way through why you would change the water every day. So the water changing every day is to help prevent the breakdown of the stems.
Yes.
When there's nothing in the water. I mean, our step is we use CVBN tablets in all of our harvest buckets. Mm-hmm. Then when buckets or Procona boxes that belong to my customers, which we have here to pack, we've washed them, we fill those buckets with the appropriate amount of water, and we then add holding solution, which is low dose flower food, basically, nutrients with some biocide in it, and to keep the plants healthy, but not moving along, and keeping the water really clean. After 2 or 3 days, I could see if you were still sitting on those flowers that they might need to be changed. Because that's what we tell our customers, the end customer, is, if you've got zinnias or any dirty flower, which we call them, change the water every 3 or 4 days, trim the bottom, half an inch off. That's because stems are rotting, right?
Sure.
I think that perhaps the suggestion to change the water every day is to help with the vase life.
Mhm.
And whether that's just what they're currently doing that they've had success with, because there are people that do that. And
Yeah.
I'm like you. No, the cost
Yes.
of flower conditioning products
Yes.
is far less than the labor to change water
Yes.
every day. Because
And
that
to add another whole, another stack of buckets to wash too. I mean, the
I was
labor
going to say
for
washing
that.
buckets.
Yes.
That's really a big one. So I feel, I mean, in my operation, we always delivered to our commercials with holding solution in there, and felt like they pretty much used our flowers within 2 to 3 days
Right.
easily. And so, that wouldn't really be
An
necessary
issue.
to
Right.
actually change that. But again, it depends. But if they're dropping them off with CVBN, because there have been talks from people when they're experiencing zinnia stem troubles, whether it's meltdown or brown edges or any of those things that can happen. Oftentimes the conditioning products get blamed for it.
Right.
But I can tell you, I've experienced those things when there's no conditioning products.
Right. Right.
So they're all shoots at the moon, right? I mean, we're just
Mhm.
trying to figure it out. And I'm telling you, John's at big conferences. I mean, we try to nail him down, and there is no conducive
Yes.
to say what it is. And so we're all just trying. So
Right.
just to say, that's why somebody said that may be what worked for them.
Yeah.
We have not found that to avoid. When you have the problem, none of the solutions
Right.
work when you've got
That's true. That's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Lisa, your official ruling is you would not change the water in the buckets for
Not
Ellen.
every day.
Okay, now we're going to move on to challenge number 3, and this is unpredictable vase life. So what are some vase life challenges you have with zinnias, Ellen?
Well, again, I feel like the root of a lot of my problems is unpredictability. So
Right.
sometimes I feel, and we vase test a lot of the flowers that come in. I mean, new flowers always, but like this week I did a vase test of some zinnias that I bought from a farm that I haven't bought from in a while. So I just wanted to see how theirs did. So we do vase test a lot that comes in. And, with some flowers, I feel like it's very consistent. The vase life is very consistent. Like if I put a lisianthus in a vase, I know that, pretty much 10 days, it's the same almost all the time. Zinnias, on the other hand, I feel like sometimes it's 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it's 8 or 9 days. There's like no way, and I don't know what it is. Like, is it the variety? Is it the farmer? Is it my clippers weren't that clean? Like, I don't know. It seems like zinnias more than other flowers, the vase life is unpredictable, which makes me nervous about sending them out in single orders, because those people are really, unlike events, those people are really expecting their flowers to last a really long time. And so if I have created an arrangement where I've been careful to use flowers that do last a long time, but the zinnias are, looking kind of cruddy after 2 or 3 days, I'm going to hear about it. I don't like to hear about things.
So Lisa, what do you generally say is the vase life of zinnias, at least the zinnias that you would cut and sell?
Sure. And I mean, we like to say all of our flowers, with the exception of a handful of short livers like poppies and sweet peas, are 7 to 10 days. But, what I kind of alluded to earlier and what John kind of made us all aware of is that there are so many zinnia diseases
Yes.
and problems in that department, independent. And I mean, from mildew and bacteria spot, I mean, there's just articles
So
and
many.
articles, so many. And it just seems like that all of our problems are rooted in that, meaning this is a perfect year to talk about this. So this is a year that we're having an unusually cool start to our season. We haven't had a lot of rain. It's just been not the classic hot, humid, burning hot. And guess what? We can't kill a zinnia.
I was going to say, I bet the zinnias are looking great.
Yep. And they're lasting forever.
Yes.
And it's all about that. Now, you give us a year where it is just, oh my gosh,
humid.
Probably about 7 years ago, we were in the middle of our supermarket. I mean, we did a lot of supermarket bouquets. We stopped putting zinnias in supermarket bouquets our first year in because of this. So we just totally, that's why I became a straw flower fan.
Yes.
It's like when the zinnias start getting iffy in July, the straw flowers are in, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, and that's what I think all the underlying problems that we have are rooted potentially in disease that
Yes.
whether you think you have it or not.
Right.
Unless you're sending tissue off to NC
Mhm.
State or whoever your extension agent is to get it, evaluated.
Right.
I think that's the root of short vase life. Just the quality of the stem.
Right.
Stem quality affects all the things that we're talking about. And when they're compromised, they just don't do well sick.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
they're wiener sick flowers where
Mhm.
you can have a lisianthus that might have they can be covered in thrips, but they're going to last 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what
Right.
I mean? It's
Yes.
just so, but I will say, because it's so funny when I talk about them, people say, "Oh my gosh, zinnias last forever," and I think maybe.
Right. Maybe they might. I don't know.
So I
The ones
agree.
that I have in the shop right now are, like for our vase test, we just put it in clean water and we set it on a table and we ignore it. We don't do anything to it. And it's been, 8 days and they look great. No problem. But we had some a couple weeks ago that I got on Thursday and by Friday morning were completely dead. So there was just no,
Well, we have
I
a name
like to
for
be
that.
in control of things. And if somebody gives me something and I don't know how to control the situation, that's when I feel like anxious because I'm like, no matter what I do, I'm not sure if it's right.
So I would say that I would just classify zinnias as a high risk.
Yes.
In the situation that a florist is using them in, particularly, if you've gotten a bunch of salmon zinnias to use for a Saturday event that you get on Wednesday, and it's like,
Yep.
So yeah, that's how I would classify them. And some years are better than others.
Right.
And of course, you buy from a vast pool of people, so you don't know what their exact conditions are. And anyway, so I totally understand that. But I think in a non-reality world, we should not compost zinnias. We should not bush hog them in the field and turn it in, you know what I mean, and leave it out in the field because of all the spores and all the things that are on it. So I know, every time we bush hog zinnias, I think, oh my gosh, I'm perpetuating. But what's the reality of me being if we had to pull that crop out and put them out for the trash man to pick up?
Right.
Which is what
just would never be worth it. Right.
Exactly.
Okay, now we're on to challenge number 4, and this is browning petal tips. Can you just describe this problem a little bit, Ellen?
Well, browning tips, if you're like looking at a binary giant, like it is very easy to see a browning tip. I don't know what causes it. I don't know why it happens, but I can very clearly see that the tip is brown and I can toss it in the compost. This picture is perfect for this because the whole queen lime series, has this like vintagey, washed out kind of brown look. So sometimes I'm not really sure if it's brown or if the color is supposed to be brown. And we always laugh because we will have customers, Roseanne Brown is like a Lysianthus is a perfect example. People who don't know it will come back and say, you gave me a dead flower. And I'll say, no, it's designed to look brown. These limes, they have a little bit of that look, but zinnias also are very prone to brown tips. So I'm just never really sure. And it always makes me nervous to send something like that to a customer.
Yeah. And I don't know the science of what causes the brown tips. I know that there's a lot of theories. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I left them in the CVBN tablets, which are the chlorine tablets, too long, or I did this or I didn't do that. But I frankly have never heard a scientific proven reason, which, if anybody's going to have science, it's going to be John Dole. And he has not come out, at least that I'm aware of a reason why this really happens. And again, I just feel like the super healthy stems just resist a lot of these problems. So I do not have a solution, but I will agree. And if y'all are watching on YouTube, the middle of this picture is an orange lime. Right to the right, look at that shriveled flower. Yep. So is that stem just out of water? Or is that the beginning of a little issue where the rest of these are beautiful? And there lies the unpredictability of zinnias. I definitely see it across the board. And we grow them all. We grow zowie and, uproar and Benaries and Oklahoma and Queens. And, I mean, when it's happening, it happens for us across the board.
Mhm.
All right, on to challenge number 5. And this is weak necks. Ellen, can you describe what we mean when we say weak necks and what you have to do to remedy this if you get zinnias and they end up having weak necks?
So weak necks, the inside of zinnia stems are hollow, right? And there's, at the top where the flower meets the stem, that sort of bigger, bigger spot is hollow. So there is a lot of risk of those heads getting bent just on buckets or in moving. And it's not like a huge deal if it happens like once in a while. Like, if I have to ditch one flower, no big deal. There's also, tips that I can use, like sometimes we'll just put like a piece of stem wire right down the middle of the center of the zinnia into the stem and clip that off at the top just to hold that head in place. But again, this is an added step.
Yep.
You remember when I talked about the price point for zinnias being very good?
Yes.
It diminishes the more and more I have to do to keep it looking good.
Yes, for sure.
And this is something that might be able to be solved perhaps by the harvest stage. Lisa, what tips do you have about weak necks?
So weak necks are definitely harvested too early. And I understand the fine line of figuring it out. For me, we tend to harvest zinnias a little earlier than most people do. I'm going to try to reach across here and find one. I like the way this zinnia looks.
Mm-hmm.
See how there's none of the little yellow flowers have popped. It's kind of fully open. And in fact, I was looking for one. I really like them even before they're fully open. Because once the little florets in the middle, those little yellow flowers pop, they're really on their way down. And these guys have great strong necks.
Yes.
And so in my experience, it is definitely stage to harvest. And I will tell you, I understand people struggle. We had here on the farm several years ago, we had a physician that worked here. She was an ER doctor, 25 years, totally burnt out, like ready to kill the world, And so she came here and worked. And I can remember her talking to me in my office one day, and she said, who knew that the hardest job on this farm would be deciding which zinnia to cut?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And for me, it just seems so simple.
Yeah.
You're walking up to the bed and I'm looking down. You can see those zinnias that are fully developed that have lots of petals. That's not necessarily the case here. I have never done the wiggle test. I've just never needed to do that. But if that's what people need to do, but I think they need to start out maybe doing the wiggle test, if that's what it takes for you. And then the ones that don't wiggle, what does it look like?
Yes.
And then, when I'm cutting a zinnia, I'm already eyeing the next one I'm going to cut. And I know when I cut one that's going to have a weak neck. Like if we're desperate for flowers, I'm thinking to myself, well, we'll put that one in the middle of the bouquet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When we're desperate. Yeah. So you got to learn your stage to harvest. That's a really important part of the whole using zinnias.
And Layne, can I ask too, the other thing we see about broken necks is people delivering them incorrectly.
Yep.
So people are either, they're putting them too many in a bucket, so they're bumping up against the rim and breaking, or they're putting them in a wrong sized bucket so that they're bending and breaking. Or they have like rubber band them weird so that the rubber band is like up by the neck, like crunching them, also making them break. So there's a lot of things after harvest that even if they were harvested maybe at the correct time, that people then are delivering with issues.
Yeah. Totally agree with that, Ellen. I'm just grabbing up a bunch of flowers. We always hold our flowers in the bottom third. And that prevents that problem of at least crushing them with your own. Some are crushed before they even get rubber banded.
Sure.
And people overstuff the buckets. They don't they don't cut them the right level. I mean, yes, Ellen, you're so right. They kill their crop before they get it to the florist, or make it such a bad shape that it's really not usable.
Yes.
And also, even when you're stripping them, you have to be careful where you're holding them, because that's a place where damage can happen up at that neck.
Absolutely.
And overstuffing the buckets, which we have some here, that just really damages the blooms. Because when
Yeah.
they get when the flowers, because we know they're pretty much fully open, right? When they're cut, which makes them susceptible. And
Yes.
when they get packed and bent, they don't really furl back out like you want to
No.
think they are.
And the heads are so big that when you are rubber banding the stems very tightly, all those heads are getting squished in there too. Like,
Pressure,
I would prefer somebody not rubber band my zinnias, just give me a bucket, because
right?
so many people are rubber banding them so tightly and so incorrectly that we are losing like 4 or 5 in a 10 stem bunch,
Yeah.
making, the per stem price, double what it would have been.
Well, you're experiencing the shrinkage that we're trying
Yes,
to
that I try
avoid
not
by
to
being a
have.
local grower.
Exactly.
So I feel like this was one we were actually able to resolve, perhaps.
Yes.
Well,
Okay, good.
education, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're on to our last challenge, which is kind of a big one, and it's called Total Meltdown, is what I've called it. It's Zinnia Meltdown. What is that, Ellen? Describe it to us.
I don't know. I don't even know what it is. I just know that there are some times, well, first of all, everybody talks about Zinnia meltdown. It's like always a very hot topic amongst the farmers every summer.
Yeah.
Who's having it, which varieties are having it, which farms are having it, what causes it. There's always a lot of talk, but I don't have a really good understanding of, what it is or why it happens. What I see is right, that you will get flowers into the shop, and less than 24 hours, they are completely black, smushed heads, broken necks, black stems. And when I read about it, one of the things Lisa talked about before was like the sensitivity to bacteria, that they're very sensitive to, everything. But again, that to me is like the real issue with buying zinnias. All these other things, I might be able to like risk it, and I do risk it. But meltdown, I have no clue how to predict it, what to do. I don't know.
Well, you can't predict it as a florist. And so I will tell you that one of the first years that I went into high production, and I went into high production because I stuck my neck out and bought a $30,000 John Deere tractor that I had to pay for. Do you know what I mean? It's like I ramped my business up.
Yep.
So the thumb was on me to perform, right?
Mhm.
Well, I can still remember, zinnias were a big crop for us.
Sure.
And Zinnia meltdown started early in the season, and I wanted to like run away from home. I was terrified. And I can remember conversing with Betsy Hitt, I think, and because she's the one said, send it to John, let him get a sample. But what I want to offer is, this is what kind of convinced me that it's definitely growing conditions.
Yeah.
I literally, in my normal Lisa way, as I sometimes do when I have a problem that I just can't figure out, I put blinders on, and I just we had enough space. That's when I actually leased an additional acre. So I had like 4 acres here. I just kind of left that garden. It was probably 10 beds of zinnias, 10 100-foot beds of zinnias. I just kind of abandoned them and for several weeks. And guess what? So we decided, well, all right, we're going to take those beds down. It's like, gosh, these darn zinnias are so blooming gorgeous. Maybe we just do a bobo. I call it doing a bobo. Bobo loves to go in and hack all the dead flowers out and rejuvenate. And guess what? We harvested zinnias that did not have meltdown from the same spots, from the same beds, from the same plants that had it previously. I mean, we're talking, you harvest them today. I delivered them. My best customer called me the next day. So in a percona box, I typically would have 6 10-stem bunches. So that's 60 zinnias in a percona box. That gives them enough room, the whole 9 yards. She called me and said, 3 out of the 4 percona boxes that you left here yesterday are down. And I'm like, oh my, I mean, that's what sent me over the edge. And so that's why I don't have the answer, but I think it's rooted in disease. And I'm in the South. It's a real challenge. So some years it's good. So what my strategy has been is I have backup flowers to use. And that's why the sunflower production is so incredibly important. Small ones that can stand in as focal flowers, along with other things like straw flowers and lysianthus and all that stuff. So yeah, totally on board. But I think the whole issue is rooted in the same thing, the health of the stems, that they're susceptible. And it's kind of like, when you have a a disease, you have rheumatoid arthritis, we have in our family, that makes them susceptible to everything coming down the pike. That's how I feel zinnias.
Yes. And I know one of our growers who has had a lot of issues with it. Well, two things I'll say. One was like saying to me, oh, maybe we could apply, for an ASCFG grant or John Dole or somebody to do some testing specifically in regions where it is very hot, where there is a lot of humidity, because, those are places where it seems like disease is going to be, more of a problem.
Rampant.
Right. Then you're going to have necessarily like in the Midwest or in the, in a cooler place. It seems like in hotter, warmer, wetter temperatures, that's where you're seeing a lot of the problems. Yeah. We also have a grower here who is only now growing Oklahomas because she, from her own, studies of her space and her varieties, believe that for her, the Oklahomas have much less meltdown than other varieties. Now,
I used to think that. I understand.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've had them in all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, John has done a lot of studies, and I mean, that would be great. It's a lot of money to do something like that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it's very specific to an area.
Right. A very small area.
So I don't know the real answer. I just know what I think the cause is, and we just deal with it as best we can.
Yeah.
So,
and Layne, to reiterate, because like I said, I got a lot of responses. We still use zinnias. We still love zinnias. It's just that they do give me a little bit of heartburn, like every time I have them. Like I'm just,
So do you feel any better at all after this conversation, or do you just feel like it's reinforced your belief that they are unpredictable and high?
I mean, I feel like it makes me feel like everybody has these issues, and we're all just dealing, with them the best we can, the best way we know how. And, my strategy right now is, if like I have a grower right now who grows grape berries, she hasn't had a problem, I haven't had a problem. So I'm going to keep buying from her and, keep on going. Somebody that I had a problem with, I'll communicate that problem. I will try again. If we have the problem again, I'll probably, wait out this season, the rest of this season for zinnias with them, and try again next year. So I think, that's the strategy I'm taking. I'm not giving up on them. I just feel like I got to be more thoughtful about how I use them.
All right. Any final remarks from either of you?
Just, I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah. And I mean, the grower really is sitting in the driver's seat on this. And it's really hard to look at yourself and evaluate and really say, are those flowers really disease-free or not? I mean, I don't know that we ever grow disease-free zinnias here.
Right.
I mean, there's always a little something. All you got to do is peek down in that bed and see spots or, a little white here or there. And I just think that, is the root of the problem. And I don't have the solution, as I said, because it's more than spacing them further apart.
Yes.
Because we pack everything in to get the most per square foot. And I've done it both ways, and that doesn't seem to make a difference either. So anyway, it's been great talking to you, Ellen and Layne. Another great show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So there'll be show notes underneath. Layne loves it when you comment, and she does her best to reply to everybody and get what you are asking taken care of. And again, if you want to learn more about Ellen's courses, she has Preparing to Sell to Florist, which basically is like a 90-minute course, I believe. It's the best $50 you will ever spend as a professional cut flower grower. She, in that course, talks about pricing, finding your customer, and availability lists. The three things that make you successful as a flower farmer. And then her other course, which is a much bigger and more inclusive, is Growing Your Business with Local Flower Sourcing, which I think every flower farmer should be educated on. And you want your customers to learn why and how to use fresh local flowers.
She also has an excellent newsletter, as we've mentioned. How can people sign up for that? I love your newsletter, Ellen, by the way.
Thank you. You can go to ellenfrost.com, and there's a sign up right on the homepage. It comes out on Wednesdays, and it's full of flower information, farm stories, all of these weird issues that I have that I like to share with people. So yeah, check it out.
And how about
awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
And how about your Instagram?
Yeah, you can find our company Instagram at localflow.com or at Local Color Flowers on Instagram. And you can find my personal page at Ellen Frost on Instagram.
So Ellen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And thank you, Ellen.
You.
And for signing off from another Seed Talk, it's Lisa, Layne, and Ellen out of here. Ciao, friends.
Bye.